Thanks again for tuning back into the channel. In this week's video, it is slightly different in the form that I couldn't decide what edit to show you, whether to show you the vertical edit or whether to show you the horizontal edit. So I've combined them both into one video. The starting points of both edits are exactly the same, so I've sped that part up, and then there is other parts creating borders and using rules and guides and everything. I've slowed the video back down there so that I can get the point across and as into why I use them and how they can possibly help you in your edits as well. Creating Photoshop collages is so much fun, and you can throw in any images whatsoever to create that collage. So what I've done is, if you check the link in the description, you can download all of the images used for both the horizontal and the vertical. The only one that won't be there is the inks, because that was supplied a couple of weeks ago in an edit there. So you can get down and download that one from there as well. It's a long video, so I do really appreciate if you watch the entire video, and thank you for giving up your valuable time to watch this. Hopefully you will get something from it. If you want to fast forward and just pick out bits that perhaps you didn't know, or as I said in the last video, there's a million different ways to do things in Photoshop, and you may find something that you thought, oh, I didn't think I could do it that way, or I didn't know you could do it that way. Perhaps you'll pick this up from one of these videos. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm creating both of these images in an A3 documents, one horizontal, one vertical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop all the images in and then select the layers of the images and rasterize the layers. After that, I'm going to turn the layers off, and except for the face layer, I am going to create and blend that through. In this case, I've used a screen blend. I'm then going to add two masks to this, a hide all mask and a reveal all mask. And with the reveal all mask, I'm going to paint away the square edges that you see using the soft round brush. And then once I get to the hide all mask, I'm going to use a white brush and paint the face back in, just to emphasize what I can see in the face. If this is all happening too fast for you, please go back and watch the double exposure video that's on screen now, as that goes through this process step by step. Using rulers and guides will allow you to control what you're editing more precisely, and what I've done is I've right clicked on the rulers to make them percentages, so that I can then go back in 10 and then 10 in from this side, 10 from the top, and then 10 from the bottom. And it allows you to go back in and check and move any of these guides at any point whatsoever. As you'll see, I've missed the 10 at the top here, so I'll just go back and move that back into place. What I want to do now is I want to ensure that if I go into view, that the snap is enabled. That means that anything I do will snap to the guides. In this case, I am going to use a rectangular marquee, and I'm going to draw inside of here. And you'll notice that it snaps to the guides. From this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a border, and I'm going to get into edit and stroke. And then I'm going to adjust the width of the stroke. In this case, I'm going for 15, and I have the option of changing the colour and also changing where the stroke will be. In this case, I am going for the centre. Command and D deselects, and Command or Control and H hides the guides. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the colour of the inks, and I'm going to do this using an adjustment layer and a hue saturation adjustment layer, which I'm going to change to colorize so that I get a uniform change. And then I'm just going to play around with the saturation and the hue values until I settle on one that's going to suit this image best. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the glow at either side on a new layer. That way I've got control of the layer. So taking the soft round brush and setting my foreground and background colours. I'm going to choose the yellow here and set the background colour as white. That means it's going to make this even easier. Now if I make the glow the opacity 100% and press X on my keyboard, it swaps to white. I can make the brush smaller, and that creates that. Now, to make a quick copy of that, select the Move tool and just hold down Alt and Shift and drag, and that will keep the selection on the same axis, and that way you've got a copy of both. You can see that there. I've now combined them into one layer. Next, we're going to create a repeat pattern. In this case, I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool and just draw through my document on a new layer. Once I have that, I'm going to take the linear gradient tool and the radial gradient from that tool, and I'm going to draw from the center outwards. And that's going to create a glow that fades out towards the edges. Now, you can take this as far as you want. As we already have a mask created, I'm going to take the brush and I am just going to paint away the areas that I don't want this to appear in, and that is in this case through the face. So I'm going to do that and then just take a little bit off either side before we actually start to do the pattern effect. The next two steps that I'm going to take are, I'm going to select and I am going to rasterize the layer, and then I'm going to apply the layer mask, which means there is no layer mask here. I'm now going to copy up this layer, and that is just Command and J. In this case, before that, I'm adding a slight Gaussian blur to it, and I can choose how much of a blur I want with it. Once I'm happy with the blur, I'm going to press Command and J and copy the layer up. Once the layer is copied up, I'm going to Command and T, and that's the rotation point in the center. That's where we want everything to happen. So I'm going to rotate very, very slightly here, just so that I start off the pattern. I'm going to select OK. I'm then going to hold down Shift, Control, Alt, and click T a few times. And that creates a repeat pattern at the same aspect as I had started with the first one. This can be done with many different things. I'm just going to select them all. I'm quite happy with this, and put them in a group and then name the group. Also going to repeat this for the border that I created, just in case I want to see it later. Part of the exercise, we're going to use two different selection methods. We're going into select and subject, and that will select this butterfly. But you may notice there's a couple of areas missing. What you do is you go to the lasso tool and hold down Shift on your keyboard, and that will add to the selection. And then just draw around the areas that you want to add to your selection. Once you're happy with that, just press Command and J, and it will copy the selection onto a new layer on your document, and then you can turn off the old layer if you want. From here, just go to the new layer and make as many different copies of that as you want. I've just dropped the original butterfly down behind another layer. So I'm just going to select the top one and then go auto select, move it, and then just Command and J and make 2 or 3 different copies, and then move them into a rough positioning of where I want them, and I'll also scale them down in size as well. For the next method, we're going to use the object selection tool, and that way we can use and copy each time from the same layer. So once we make a selection, Command and J to copy up, and then drop back to the original layer that we're copying from and select the butterflies that you want. Now you can choose any of these butterflies whatsoever, and just make sure you copy them, both parts are selected, you're on that layer, and then Command and J, and or Control and J if you're on a PC. Just select the ones you want, go back to the original layer, select, copy, and paste them up. From here, it's just a case of moving them and using Command and T to scale them and resize and put them into position that you want. We're also going to add a fake depth of field to this using Gaussian blur. So you can use the move tool to select the layers, and what you have to do here is the objects that are closer to you, of course, are going to have more of a blur effect, and you can see that there. And then it's just a case of going through the other parts. Now I've moved this one to the top because I know it is the top layer. That's the butterfly that's closest to us. And now I'm going to go in and just select the other butterflies, and thinking about the face being the furthest point from us, change the blur or the Gaussian blur for the rest, just so that it basically gives that fake depth of field look. Now, there are other ways of doing this, but for this type of document, it's okay to do it this way. Plus, it gets you familiar with the Gaussian blur tool. Now, if I go in here, I'm going to go to blur, Gaussian blur. The last time was 22.2, getting closer to the face, so I'm going to take that down and then release it just to see what the effect is. Yep, that's okay at that, and then click OK. Then I'm just going to select another butterfly, and again, I'm just applying the same depth of field to that one. If you go into select, it will say the last command you have done at the very top, and you can just keep repeating that until you get to the effect that you want. Because I'm going in closer now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the depth of field or the Gaussian blur within some of these as well. And if I go into File, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, I'm going to take this down even further. Instead of 7.4, I'm going to take it down. And then I'm just going to repeat this process over and over until we get closer to the face. If you watched last week's video, you'll be familiar with the small pro tip about adding a noise layer. Now, this noise layer is on its own layer, and what that does is it adds an element of noise, as you would expect, to the entire document. But doing this allows different cameras, different photographs and everything to blend together more seamlessly. And it just depends how you set this up. Normally I'll take it back to 0, zoom in and where I can see different elements and start to adjust the opacity until I get to a point where I'm happiest with it. Now you can screen blend this and use different blending modes to get to the effect that you're after. Sometimes you use normal, other times you'll use overlay soft. It just depends on what you're seeking for this. Once you're happy with the effect, select the top layer and press Shift, Control, Alt and E, and that will combine all the underlying layers into one. It's at this point we're going to do the final edits of your document. You can see here we've created all the layers there. If you now go to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, this will take us into the Camera Raw filter where we're going to do the final edits. Now I'm going to directly go straight to the masking tool because, as you'll see, two things can happen here. It selects that as the person, and then I can go in and open the masks up and just choose the pupils, click Create, and then from here I can push the saturation. I can also go in and recolour the pupils and irises. It's up to you what you do here. Now I'm going to take it back along to the kind of blue just to emphasise that because of what she's wearing, and it's got a strong element of blue in it. Once I'm happy, click OK, and then I can push the saturation, adjust the exposure, whatever I want to do with this. Then once that's done, just click OK for your document and your image is complete. For the vertical edit, we're going to add all the images back in, including the gold image, and then we're going to go through the same process again. What we're going to do differently this time is we're going to create a different border. And for this, we're going to use the polygonal lasso tool. Now, we have to make sure that the guides are in place and that view and snap is engaged. And then we just click in the points like so. And what will happen is, because snap's engaged, the polygonal lasso will click to the point. Now from here, we need this to be in a new separate layer, as you can see here. So if I go in and flood fill this, look what happens. It fills in the inside. What we don't want is it to fill in the inside. So we want to have to go up to select and then inverse and then flood fill it there. And that creates a white border on the outside. I'm going to rename this one. To create a black border, I'm just going to copy the layer up and then just press Command or Control and I to invert it. Then press Command and T and hold down Alt in the keyboard, and that will scale it up to allow me to see how much of this border that I want. Once I'm happy, I click OK, and then make a second copy of that, and then invert it. And that again gives me a white border. Again, we're going to go through the process of Command and T and holding down Alt on the keyboard, and that will scale it proportionally to whatever you want for your image. Once you're happy with that, combine both of these layers together by selecting the top layer and pressing Command or Control and E. The border that's black, you can leave it black if you wish, but in this case I'm going to use the gold so as that I have a gold border around it just to kind of complement the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale up the gold border just so as that it fits and covers everything, and that's just Command and T and then drag it down to cover everything. Now if I turn that layer back off, so as that I can reveal the underlying layer, and I use the magic wand tool and I just click in the black and then go back up to the gold layer and add a mask to it, it clips to that, and that way we now have a gold border. I've now turned off the original border that we had. Using the same technique that you saw at the beginning of the video, I'm just going to create a repeat pattern throughout this image as well. Gold circles with this. So if I take the circular marquee tool and I hold down Shift and Alt at the same time, whilst on that layer, press Command and J, and that makes a selection up. I can then move that using the Move tool and place it wherever I want on my document. Snap's still turned on in this, so all I need to do is using the Move tool and holding down Alt, click and drag, and this will drag a copy down and also create a new layer from that copy. So if I do this a few more times and then combine all these layers into one, then press Command and T, move my rotation point to the top and then rotate this into place to wherever I want it to be. Next part, I'm going to utilise the border that I turned off, and I'm going to expand it and make it grey in colour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the border, turn that back on, and then press Command and T, and then holding down Alt, just drag it proportionally up. And from here, just to make it slightly different, I'm also going to turn the opacity down as well, just so that it's there, but not too noticeable. From this point, I'm going to copy up and select and copy up the butterflies that I had, and making 2 or 3 selections. It's at this point that I want to show you a different way of working with shadows. If we select that layer and just double click on the grey, you will notice the pop-up window, and if you choose drop shadow, you've got different options in here. You can extend the shadow, you can adjust the spread, the size of the shadow, everything like that. But you can also, when on this pop-up window, go down and move the shadow with your mouse. And I can drag that along, and I can click on here and just drag it around. This is Photoshop's way of creating shadows, but there's another thing you can do here so that you have further control of these shadows once you're happy where they are. And once you're happy with the shadow as it is just now, just click OK. Once you've clicked OK, go to the layer itself and right click on drop shadow, and you'll notice it says create a layer. And you might get a pop-up window, but just click OK. What this has done is it's created a new layer from your shadow edit in Photoshop, and you can play around with this and move it freely as it's now on its own layer. You can also go in and adjust the size of it, the scale of it, warp it if you want it to fit any contours. It's entirely up to you what you do with this now. From here, go in and use the object selection tool and bring in the rest of the butterflies. Place them, scale them, do whatever you want with them to get them to where you want them to be in your composition. Contour a shadow. It is a case of creating a shadow using Photoshop again and then releasing that shadow by right clicking on the shadow and create a new layer. Now what you do is you go into the warp tool. If you go up to edit, transform and warp, and this box appears and it now allows you to adjust. This is just the basic settings we are using for this at the moment. We'll get more advanced the more videos we get deeper into the Photoshop editing. But you can go and adjust this in any way at all, and what I'm trying to do here is just make it fit the contour of the face. Because this shadow is now in its own new layer, I can go in and I can add a mask to it to erase it and blend it away, or I can just simply use the eraser tool and remove the areas that I no longer want to see within it. I'm now just going to add drop shadows from Photoshop itself just to tie the rest of the butterflies and the image together. To make a variation of this edit, I'm going to get into the inks layer and press Command or Control and A, which is select all. I'm then going to deselect that. I'm then going to go up into my border copy, and in the border copy, while holding down Control, select that area. I'm then going to go into Edit, Paste Special and Paste in Place. And what's going to happen is that will paste the inks in here with a mask already applied. From here, I want to go Command and T and just scale this up. Just till it fits the document. I can take it bigger or I can take it smaller. It's entirely up to you when you're doing this type of edit. From here, it's just a case of adding a hue saturation layer above that and adjusting and colorizing until you are happiest with the image and the color of the inks that you're going to get. Now it's a case again of blurring and matching the butterflies to the rest of the image and removing any elements that you're not happiest with. Now we're just adding and tying in the image. Again, if you check out the beginning of the video, you will see the noise layer being added. Once I'm happy with that, it's Shift, Control, Alt and E to combine everything together and then go into Camera Raw Filter. Now in this case, it doesn't recognize this as a person, so we have to edit this individually, and I'm going to edit using a radial filter. And it's basically just a case of drawing over the eyes and doing and following the same edits as you did before. So we can go in and we can adjust the saturation, we can boost that, or we can go in and add more colour to it by clicking in here and choosing the colour that we want. Once we're happiest with that, we just click OK. And then if we go back into the three dots here and we go duplicate mask, and then just move that across, the second mask across to the other eye. Once you're happy with that, just click OK, and then that will give you your final image. Hopefully you get something from that, and hopefully you've just picked up small parts from each of the one video but two different edits. Hopefully you get something from that to help you in your Photoshop journey. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.